Whoa. What the frick are you doing on top of the refrigerator?
Come here, Alexa. Did you know that Lyra honors her Irish heritage by entering the ring dressed as the Morrigan, the Celtic goddess of war and destiny, whose signs and symbols are that of a raven or a crow?
Okay, that's very cool Lyra does that, but why are you?
You see, I'm honoring Lyra, honoring her Irish heritage.
I see.
What's up, biznatches?
Let me guess, you are also honoring Lyra?
No. I'm honoring Mayor Aaron, honoring Lyra, honoring her Irish heritage. Duh!
Right on, Queen Diva Marie. See, come here, Alexa. Irish mythology is the coolest.
Dear Lord, Mayor Aaron, why don't you get down here before you get hurt?
Because, Comer Alexa, I am a method wrestling figure reviewer, okay? I have to get into character before I review a figure of the superstar.
Yeah, what he said. In fact, I'm a little disappointed that you aren't wearing wings, Comer Alexa.
What? Did I just hear someone say something about wings? Boy, I sure could use barbecue right about now.
I'm surrounded by idiots.
Hey y'all, welcome to LumberJillville. Women's wrestling lives here. Now before we get started, I just remind you to please hit subscribe to become an official resident of LJV and get a first look at all future women's wrestling figure reviews like today's WWE Main Event Series 155, the Standard and the Chase, Lyra Valkyria and her debut figures. Now I'm super excited to take a look at these. Lyra's awesome, right? But I do have a couple things I just have to get off my chest real quick. And the first thing is, why is her first figure not an elite? I get sometimes they try to shoehorn some of the women into the main event line just to get them out there a little quicker, you know, with a lot less cost, tooling, and all of that. But Lyra's one of those superstars that she should have an elite for her first figure. I said that with Kiana, honestly. Just from her looks and her attire, she'd be much more suited with an elite. So I don't know who's making the decisions over at Mattel, but I question them once again for why they would put her in the main event line when she is made for the elite line. And by the way, Mattel, if you're watching, we don't need a third Grace Waller elite, okay? I'd be happy with a first Lyra elite. But that's beyond. We're going to stay positive this review. Another thing, these women's main event figures are becoming near impossible to find. Near impossible. In Ringside Collectibles, it is not their fault. I believe that Mattel is short packing the women's main event figures, and that's why they're so hard to come by, and why they're up in price on Ringside Collectibles, and why the pre-orders go so quick is because they probably don't have a lot to start. So that's a supply issue. That's an issue with Mattel. So Mattel really needs to start making more of these women's figures because it's becoming increasingly expensive and super, super hard to obtain these women's main event figures. And I just barely got the regular in the Chase Lyra. I barely got the regular in the Chase Kiana. And there's going to come a day where I won't be able to review a modern day women's wrestling figure. And that terrifies me because that's what we do here. But either way, like I said, not Ringside's fault, but Mattel needs to up their production. I can't tell you when you go to the store how many millions of Romans you see or countless other superstars. Just give us more of the women's figures, please. 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 All right. Now let's take a closer look at this figure, starting with the packaging. So starting out with the packaging here, I do absolutely love the main event style packaging. Even though I really do think Lyra's first figure should have been an Elite, I am grateful and thankful that we do have figures, not just one, but two of Lyra released at all. So hopefully that Elite's coming, but I just had to get that out there. Now the packaging here is awesome. I love this new style that they used here for the last few series. I like the color theme on it, and yes, they did include the first time in the line yellow stripe, which I love. It really stands out for rookie figures of these women's wrestlers. Sometimes they forget to add that, so that's why I had to bring that up. But yeah, this packaging, very cool. Nice open window. If you want to get this signed, you have a lot of space to work with here. An image of the stunning and talented Lyra. On the back here, let's see what she has. Your signature move, Nightwing, first time in the line. Lyra, very cool. And she's classified as a technician, so that sounds absolutely correct. Now, the packaging is the same between the regular and the Chase. And yes, the standard version is in the red boots, and the Chase is in the black boots. So let's get started taking a closer look at these. I'm going to open them up, but let's start off with the standard release. Main Event Series 155, Lyra Valkyria Standard Release. This attire is from the February 20th, 2024 episode of NXT. On this night, Lyra would defend her title twice in one night, defeating both Shotzi and Lash Legend to retain her NXT Women's Championship. Some overall first impressions of this Lyra standard release. I will say that there is a lot more design detail in the attire's paint application, but I'm going to be honest, going from doing the figure evolution video of Natty's figures to this, what happened to Mattel? They used to put so much care and effort and love into their women's basic figures, and this main event line is a continuation of that basic line, and now they just phone it in. They just phone it in completely. Even if they put a lot of painted detail on there, there's not a lot of sculpting here. There's not a lot of effort put into it. I think the likeness looks good in the face, and obviously we will break this figure down up close, but I can't help to wonder, what happened? How has Mattel got so much worse over the years with these women's basic or main event style figures? It's frustrating. I get they're trying to cut costs, whatever, but why would they choose females that have this extravagant, really personalized attire and just paint it on? You know, it's disappointing, so I will say that. Another thing is this Lyra does look too tall. Now, some people out there will make comments about Mattel scaling as of late. Here's the thing. Mattel and Jazzwares, they don't scale their figures whatsoever. There's no attempt. There's no try. I think they just reuse whatever parts they have and how the figure comes out. Sometimes they look good. Sometimes they're proportionate. And then sometimes they're not. They just don't care. I mean, that's just how it is. Mattel and Jazzwares both need to go to the drawing board and try to figure out a way to translate real life height into figure height, because they can't do it anymore. They just can't. And here's an example. So Lyra's listed at 5'3". Let's go back to a previous main event figure. Kiana James listed at 5'8". And yeah, they're pretty much eye to eye, same height. So that's disappointing. And, you know, scale is never a huge issue in my scores, but hey, Lyra's the first women's intercontinental champion. She beat Dakota Kai. How does Dakota Kai's Elite look next to her? Well, Dakota Kai built at 5'6", Lyra 5'3", and it's pretty dang close. They're pretty much eye to eye. So yeah, this is one of those instances, much like the Kaden Carter main event figure, where it's just too tall. It's just too tall. But with that being said, let's move on, and let's take a close look at the face sculpt and scan. Alright, so I actually absolutely love this face sculpt, face scan, and hair sculpt. I think it looks incredible. I think it looks just like Lyra. She has a very beautiful, unique look to her, and they did a great job capturing her in figure form, especially when you go back and look at Kiana's figure, and that looks nothing like Kiana. So this does look like Lyra. They did a great job here. I love that the eyebrows kind of raised up. She's got a little smirk. Excellent job with the face sculpt and the scan here on Lyra. Now, also, what's really cool is the hair sculpt. I love, it's really hard to tell in pictures online, but we have this real tight braid that goes all the way down. Super, super cool. Very neat, very unique to her. And yeah, so overall, I absolutely love the head on this figure. I think it's excellent. All right, so moving on down to the body sculpt and the attire. When I first saw images of this figure, I thought, dang, Mattel did a great job with part choices on this Lyra figure. It looks great. It looks proportioned. It looks like it really does show her physique well. I think they did a good job. And then I opened it up and realized she's way too tall, so they didn't choose the correct parts. Whether the boots are too high or the legs are too long, whatever it is, it just doesn't quite capture Lyra's stature and physique in figure form, as a lot of these main event figures do. You know, a lot of them are very lacking, honestly. And this one's no different. And I'm disappointed because online it looked great, but when you compare it next to these other women's figures, it doesn't really replicate Lyra's stature, as I said. Now, the parts, the midsection, the torso, the arms, that's all good. I like that we have a fist hand and an open hand, which are swappable. But I can't help but think that the legs and the boots might be a little too long, and that's what's throwing it off. Now, as far as the attire goes, there is a lot of paint deco on here. And as I mentioned, I was really impressed because looking at images online, I didn't notice the red. I didn't notice the little dots in there. There's a lot more when you look at it up close. So there's a lot of effort put into the paint application of this top, but that just begs you to wonder, why not just make her in the elite line? If you're going to put this much money into the deco and all these deco hits, then why not just put her in the elite line and do a proper Lyra figure? Anyway, the top is painted up to be around her neck, which is very accurate to what she wears. We have straps on the back. Her bottoms are just black with a little red design on the back there. It looks a little chipped. And then we have this pattern painted on the front. And then these boots are just plain red kick pads. This figure, I don't know if I ever covered this, but it was like this when I first opened it, so I popped it back in, and it's good. But yeah, I don't know, y'all. I'm just a little disappointed. Main Event Series 155 Lyra Valkyria Chase version. This attire is from the 2024 NXT Roadblock Special NXT episode airing on March 5th. On this night, the Kabuki Warriors would defeat the team of Lyra and Tatum Paxley to retain the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. So as far as the Chase version goes, my first impressions, I think I prefer the standard over the Chase. Now, this is the more, I guess, iconic Lyra look. She mostly wears dark boots, but I actually like the red boots in the standard release because it really does make the figure stand out, and it's different, it's unique. So I think I prefer that. Now, we will take a closer look at this attire, at least the paint deco that's different. There's nothing different sculpting-wise, but we will take a look at that in a minute. But yeah, I think I prefer the standard over this one. Just my first thoughts. Now, let's briefly cover the sculpt and scan again, and then we'll get into the attire. So the reason I'm showing the face sculpt and scan again, even though it's the exact same between the standard and the Chase versions, is this one was printed on really well, and so was the standard release that I showed y'all. But just be careful if you're getting this figure in store or if you're getting it off eBay. Make sure you do the zoom in on the face because a lot of times with these women's figures, I always stress it that these scans can be printed on a little bit off. When they're printed on a little bit off, they look wonky. But here, I think it looks excellent. I'm a big fan of this face sculpt, scan, and the hair sculpt. So I just want to give you that little public service announcement. Alright, so as far as the body sculpting the attire goes, exact same body sculpt as that standard version. Although here we have black boots and then we have different deco on the attire. So let's take a closer look, starting with that top here. So the top is much different. We have a black base with a lot of gold, metallic gold paint application here on the center, looking like feathers. We got a gold spackle. Over here we even have a little green mixed in there. I think that's green. All around the border of the top. The back is just plain black. The bottoms have, once again, more of that gold spackle. We have green and gold there, and then the boots are just a plain black. So, yeah, I think this is a really cool figure, but let's compare it to the standard, and let's give our thoughts. All right, so a real quick comparison. We have the standard on the left, Chase on the right. Now, which one, in my opinion, do I think is the better? I think the standard release actually pops a lot more. Now, obviously, Lyra wears black boots much more often. So this look on the right is more of the iconic Lyra look. But on the left here with the red boots, I just think it really stands out and pops. And that's the one I prefer, absolutely. Now, we're going to get to this in the final segment of this video about the pricing and all of that, whether I think it's worth it. But if you're just dead set on having a Lyra figure in your collection, then I would definitely try to get the standard, because I think the chase is going to cost a lot more. And honestly, the standard really pops. But as I mentioned, talking about the scale, that's the one thing that is disappointing about this figure across the board. If you're looking to recreate the finals match for the first ever Women's Intercontinental Champion, and you put your Dakota Kai Elite with Lyra, it looks wonky. Dakota Kai is supposed to be a lot taller, and she's really not in figure form. Now, this is an Elite, so let's bring in 5'8" Kiana James, and they're seeing eye to eye. And I know I already did this in a video, but I just have to stress that, you know, scaling isn't a huge issue in my scoring until there's a figure that's meant to be displayed with other figures that just doesn't look proportioned, doesn't look right. You know, Katana next to Kaden, horrible. Now, this Lyra as a standalone figure is okay. It's cool. It's okay. I have a lot of mixed emotions here. Let's talk about it. All right, so overall, I give WWE Main Event Series 155 Lyra Valkyria and her debut figures, both the standard and the chase versions, overall scores of 7.5s out of 10s. So, here's the thing. I think the face sculpt, the scan, the hair sculpt is fantastic. I absolutely love it. I think the body sculpt works okay. It works pretty good. It looks good as a standalone figure. However, when you put her on the shelf with other women's wrestling figures, she is too tall. So that does take away some. Now, another thing that takes away from the scoring is the lack of personality in this figure. They did do a lot of paint deco, a lot of little paint details are applied, but they've shown in the past. I mean, look at the Xia Li main event figure. They've shown that they can put unique sculpting, unique parts into the women's main event line, so I don't know why they just stopped doing that. They just don't do it. Very rarely do we get a women's main event figure that has the proper deco or has some love and care and attention to detail put into it. So it's getting kind of old that we're just getting these new heads on these generic body sculpts with the attire just painted on. You know, I mean, that's how the Kiana was, that's how this Lyra is, that's how a lot of these women's main event figures have been as of late. And I can't help to think, if I didn't do that figure evolution of Natty, I might have given this figure, both of them, a higher score, but I think I've just gotten way too familiar and comfortable with how Mattel makes their women's main event figures nowadays. But to me, there's no excuse. There is absolutely no excuse to why they are so dumbed down as far as attention to detail that's put into them. So let me give my overall thoughts here in the next segment. Alright, so now let's talk about these figures, whether they're worth it or not. Now, I've briefly covered this earlier, but as of now, okay, if you're dead set on wanting Lyra in your collection, right now on ringsidecollectibles.com, at the time of this recording, they have the chase version with the black boots here, and it is up for $34.99 on Ringside Collectibles. They just put it up. Use discount code LJV to save 10%, but that price is really high. And as I mentioned before, it's not Ringside's fault. When their stock goes down, the prices go up. That's just the business model. That's how it goes. But the fact that Mattel is producing so little of these women's main event figures, it's in turn making the pre-orders very, very high in price, making them hard to find in stores, and the secondary market is just astronomical right now. And that's frustrating. Us women's wrestling figure collectors, we deserve better. We deserve to have these figures accessible. And in my honest opinion, this figure is absolutely not worth $34.99. By any means, okay? That's more than triple the price of what this figure would be if you found it in the stores. Now, do I think that you should spend that to get Lyra in your collection? That's tough, because Lyra, in my opinion, is so amazing. She's so talented. She is truly an underrated superstar. I just think she is so awesome. And to have her finally in LJV, it makes me smile. I'm happy to have Lyra in my collection. but I'm not happy about the price that these main event figures are currently at and how hard they are to find in stores. It's very frustrating here. So if I were you, if you're watching this video and you are dead set on getting Lyra and adding her to your collection and you need one of these Lyras and the review spoke to you, then head on over to Ringside Collectibles and spend that $34.99. But if you have patience, if you're willing to wait, I don't have patience by the way, if you're willing to wait, maybe find it in stores for 1/3 that price, or wait till she has an Elite, get a couple of those. That's what I would suggest because, yeah, I mean, right now the prices on these women's main event figures are crazy. They're crazy. I mean, I have a Chase Kiana. I don't know if I'm ever going to see a Chase Kiana again in my life. So I will say something else. You know, I've covered it a little bit before, and maybe it's the figure evolution of Natty that made me realize just how far Mattel has really tanked with the quality in their main event figures. Thanks for stopping by LumberJillville. Women's wrestling lives here. To get a first look at all future women's wrestling figure reviews and women's wrestling figure related videos, make sure to hit subscribe and become an official resident of LJV today. Now I hope you enjoyed today's review. Happy figure hunting, and I'll see y'all very soon. Have a great night, y'all.